Let's do this. So, legal ethical guidelines for safe practice. So in psych, we have a lot of legal ethical concepts and issues. Okay, we discovered just now that before our patients were institutionalized, now they have rights. Okay, now they have rights. Now they have rights. Let's talk about this. Is my slide moving forward for you guys or no? No, right? I don't get it. I don't understand why. Now it is. Okay. What are ethics? What is this? The study of philosophical beliefs about what is considered right or wrong in society. What's right? What's wrong? Morality. Okay. Bioethics. What is considered right or wrong in science, now in medicine, politics, everything together. Okay. In relation to healthcare. Okay. Ethical dilemma, a conflict between two or more courses of action. We've gotten a whole bunch of medical ethical dilemmas, okay? Whether it's in psych or in any other unit on in the hospital, okay? Now let's talk about this. So know this like the back of your hand, okay? It's bolded plus it's red. I mean, come on, okay? So let's talk about the 5 principles of bioethics, okay? First one, beneficence, the duty to promote good, okay? Advocating for your patient, okay? Advocating for your patient. So on the psych unit, oftentimes when our patient comes in for suicidal ideations, SI, suicidal ideations, they have thoughts to harm themselves, we oftentimes place them on a one-to-one, which means there is a sitter with them at all times, okay? This is the duty to promote good, right? Because you're ensuring safety. You place them on a one-to-one, you place them close to the nurse's station to keep an eye on them. Duty to promote good. This is the act of beneficence, okay? Autonomy, respecting the... So, we know that in the past our patients were institutionalized and they had no rights or the ability to make their own decisions and make their own choices. However, now they have the principle of autonomy. You're a psych patient, even though they're on holds, they have the right to refuse meds. They have the right to refuse treatment. I don't care if they're on a 72-hour hold. We will talk about holds briefly, like shortly. It does not matter. If your patient is a psych patient, they have the right to refuse, okay? Justice, distribute resources or care equally among patients. Maybe you have 5 patients and you like one better than the other. I don't care. You provide care equally. You spend time with them equally. Okay? Some patients are more difficult to care for while others aren't. It does not matter. You care for them equally. Are there expectations to their right to refuse? There are. We're going to talk about it. It's this chapter. It's in the next few slides. I promise you. I gave you my word. Yeah. Of course. Justice, we did not talk. Did I talk about justice? Yes, I did, just now. The duty to promote care equally. We went over that. Fidelity, maintaining loyalty and commitment, doing no wrong to a patient. Avoid causing harm. For example, okay, the unit is kind of hectic today. I have so many patients. I have an admit coming in. Our patients are escalating. You know what? I think I'm just going to restrain my patient because they'll make my life easy. That's fidelity. You do not do this. You do no wrong to a patient, ever, okay? And then veracity, one's duty to always communicate truthfully. For example, okay, you're the nurse on the unit, it's 7 p.m., your shift is coming to an end. The night shift nurse comes in this beautiful scenario, hint, okay? You're giving end of shift report and your patient heard you talking about them. And so when you approach them, when you walk into the room to do your assessment, they say, I heard you talking about me. Why would you talk about me? How can you do this? How dare you? You say, yeah, I was talking about you. Okay? Tell them the truth. I was talking about you because it's on the shift. It is my duty to continue care. It is my duty to give all pertinent info about you to the next nurse. Be truthful. Always. Do not lie. Okay? Do not lie. You will not trigger them whatsoever. Okay? Am I making sense? Know this like the back of your hand. Even Proctor loves this. Okay? Even Proctor loves this. Civil rights. Your patient has civil rights. Okay? The right to humane treatment and care. No longer insulin shock therapy or drilling holes. They have the right to vote. Your psych patient can vote. Your psych patient can drive. Okay? Due process of they're allowed to go to court and challenge their hold. The right to informed consent. You're not just going to force treatment. Remember, autonomy, they have the right to refuse. Confidentiality. Private. What's between you and them remains private. Okay? They have their civil rights. Okay, confidentiality. So, HIPAA. We've all heard of HIPAA. You cannot break HIPAA, okay? Even when it comes to psych, okay? You cannot release info without patient consent, okay? Unless your patient signs a release of info, allowing you to have a list of people who are allowed to have information about them, okay? So, if someone calls the nurse's station and says, is John Smith on the unit? And you see that they're not on the release of info, you cannot give out this information. I cannot confirm nor deny that this patient is here. Unfortunately, I cannot give any info. Please, please contact the family or whatever. You cannot confirm or deny that the patient is here. In psych, same rules apply. Okay, confidentiality does not go out the window. Once your patient has passed away, same rules apply. If they're not on the list, you do not give out info, even after your patient is deceased. Does that make sense? I'm a hospice nurse, okay? Sometimes when my patient has passed away, I get calls. I just want to find out if so-and-so passed away, blah, blah, blah. And I know they're not on the list. I say, I apologize, I cannot give any information about anybody. Please communicate with the family or someone else who you know is affiliated with them. Deny everything, okay? Even after they're passed away. Okay, confidentiality of professional communications. You're working in the biggest hospital of West Coast University, and you're caring for patients on the unit. Okay, you take a break with your nurse, with your friend nurse, and you're talking about them, and you're talking about patients while you're in the cafeteria. And I, being a nurse practitioner, hear you guys. I'm going to approach you guys and I'm going to tell you, cut it out, guys. You cannot talk about patients outside the unit. Okay, this is a public space. You're in the cafeteria. Confront people who are talking about patients outside of the unit. Okay? You cannot do that. Am I making sense, guys? If you walk into an elevator, stop talking about them. Hey, you can't talk about patients on the outside of the unit. Okay? Stays private. Okay, I don't ask about this on the test about HIV, but confidentiality. Okay, if your patient hasn't allowed you to release info that they have HIV to whomever, you can't. Okay, specifically for HIV patients, there's a list of people whom the patient wants to know. Okay, if they're not on the list, then you can't release this info. Okay, same rules apply. Does this make sense, guys? Confidentiality does not go out the window with psych patients. Everything stays private. Everything between you and them. Okay? Now, there is an exception to this rule in psych. Okay? It's called the Tarasov Law. Okay? Yes, HIPAA says I can't give out any info, but in psych, because it's such a peculiar demographic of people we care for, there's a Tarasov law. The duty to warn and protect third parties, okay? If the nurse determines the patient poses a serious threat to another person, the nurse has the right to protect the third party. So, if I'm caring for my patient, okay, true story. I was caring for a patient. We were discharging her in like a few days. And we were doing like we were doing discharge teaching and planning and all that stuff. And she's like, yeah, when I get discharged, I'm going to burn my parents' house down. You know that, right? I'm here because of them. I was here because of them, but I want to burn the house down. Her parents were not on the release of info, but due to the Tarasoff law, I had the right to report this to the treatment team, and they notified the parents. Does this make sense? This is Tarasoff law. If they tell you, I'm going to burn my parents' house down, please keep this a secret. I don't want you to tell anybody. You're supposed to tell them. I can't keep this a secret. I have to let my treatment team know. Okay? I cannot keep a secret. Okay? So you're not going to trigger them. You have to tell them. It is the law. It's called the Tarasoff law. And remember, you're not their bestest friend forever. You're their nurse. You're caring for them. The law is above that. Okay? This is the one exception to the rule. You are obliged to share that info with the treatment team. Okay? Tarasoff law. Cool, huh? I think it's cool. Protects you and third parties. I'm not gonna talk about the second bullet point, child, handicap, vulnerable, and elder abuse reporting statutes. We talk about that when we talk about abuse. But you guys know there are no statutes of limitation on reporting abuse. Okay? That is all I will say. Tarasoff law makes sense, yeah? Okay, so how the heck does your patient get admitted to the unit? So there is voluntary admission, where the patient walks in and they get admitted by themselves. They voluntarily come to the unit, okay? Then we have involuntary. Involuntary is where they are a danger to self, DTS, danger to others, DTO, or extremely gravely disabled, okay? This is where they want to harm themselves, DTS. This is where they want to kill someone else, or they're so gravely disabled that they can't care for themselves. They haven't showered for days, they haven't eaten for days because of an underlying psychiatric issue. Now, an involuntary hold, which 3 categories, okay, the DTO, DTS, GD, they're allowed to be placed on a unit for 72 hours, 5150, involuntary hold legally. This is legal, and this is for their safety and the safety of others. This is called involuntary hold, okay? Involuntary hold. Does this make sense? So it sounds like we're being so harsh and we're forcing them, but we're not. It's safety. This is the only time you are involuntarily held, by the way. Select all that apply. DTS, DTO, GD. Okay? And then there's temporary admission, or when a person's confused or demented. Or emergency admission. Don't worry about that. We're going to talk about that later. Don't worry about it. I want you to, the DTS, DTO, and GD. Okay? Okay, so a little more so you guys can have an idea. So who places these guys on holds, right? The psychiatrist and people who are part of the PET team. Psychiatric, PET team. Psychiatric emergency treatment, PET team, okay? They come in and they can be nurses who are certified to place patients on holds. So DTO, DTS, GD, you qualify for a 5150. Even police officers can put people on 5150s, okay? When you are on the unit for 72 hours, right, you're being observed, right, by the nurses, by the doctor, blah, blah, blah. When the 72 psychiatrist can do that. The psychiatrist will evaluate the patient and decide, are they still any of those things? Okay? If they're not, the hold will be broken and they can get discharged. Okay? If they still are one of those things, then we can move them to 5250. We prolong that hold long. Okay, another 14 days. After those 14 days, if there's still danger to self, 5260, so on and so forth. Does that make sense, you guys? Then we're going to talk about a conservatorship in the next few slides. But this is the criteria for hold. Okay, this is it. Okay. This is a true story. I used to work at Encino Medical Center. Okay, it's a really nice hospital. It's like a small hospital. You learn a lot there. And one day I was off. And if you guys know Encino, reevaluate, like when the 72 hours are up. Yeah, only the psychiatrist can do it. And someone who is certified, PET certified. One day I was off and I went to Ralph's with a friend, and it's a hospital. There's a Ralph's really right next to Encino Medical Center. I realized that someone's approaching me and is like, "Hey, do you remember me? Do you remember me?" And I look at him, and my friend looks at him, and we remember him, that he's our patient, that he was our patient, we cared for him, okay? He's like, "You'll see me tomorrow. I'm going to be on the psych unit tomorrow. You'll see me. Watch out, watch out." And we're like, "Oh my gosh, no freaking way," right? The next day, what happened was he ran into traffic just to get admitted. So he was a danger to self. So the cops were called. They placed him on a 72-hour hold. They brought him to the ER, and then he was put up on our unit. So sometimes this is how it also works. Okay, psych patients know what to do to come onto the unit, especially when it gets a bit colder. They have a roof over the head. They have food. They have shelter. Am I making sense? There's a whole different aspect, you know? There's a whole different aspect to all of this. Am I making sense? I just wanted to give you guys like an idea of what can also happen, you know? And then there are people who really need help, okay? Don't get me wrong. And then there are people who are really good at manipulating the system because they're frequent flyers and they've been at it for a very long time, okay? I thought that was very interesting. Yeah. And he said, "Yeah, remember me? I saw you yesterday." I was like, "Great." And they remember you, and they remember your name. It's not even pronounceable for a lot of people. There you go. That happened. Okay. Now, whoops, am I going back? Okay. Now, remember I said the bioethical principle of autonomy, where your patient has the right to refuse meds because they do, even if they're on a hold, because maybe they're hallucinating, right, Greg? Or maybe they're danger to self, danger to others. Even if they're on a 5150, they have the right to refuse meds. When can you administer meds against their will? This is when this comes into play. So it's called a Reese petition. A Reese petition is the least restrictive method of administering meds against patient's will. Okay? Let me give you a lovely scenario. For example, you have a patient who's diagnosed with schizophrenia, who's on a 5150, and he's in your care, okay? And he's kind of declining. He's not improving. He's escalating in behavior. He's kind of becoming combative. He's kind of hallucinating more. Yet he's still refusing meds, which he has the right to do. But he's not improving, and he needs meds to improve. So I can file. Excuse me, guys. Whew. It's all the freaking dust. Thank you, guys. So we can file a Reese petition, which basically says, excuse me, judge, this is what's going on. He's not improving. He's refusing his meds, which is fine. He's hallucinating. He's becoming combative, escalating in behavior. He needs help. He needs these meds. He needs to take meds. So the judge, there'll be a hearing in which the judge comes to the unit. There's a hearing with the social workers, the RN, the MD, and then they give you the Reese petition. They grant you this petition. Now legally, they need to take these meds. Okay? This is where you administer meds against the patient's will. Against the patient's will. Okay? That's one method of administering against patient's will. Then we go to LPS. What the heck is that? This is the Britney Spears situation. You guys know her story, right? The father, all that stuff. So her father was a conservator, okay? An LPS conservatorship, an adult conservator who has the responsibility of overseeing the comprehensive medical treatment for another adult, Britney Spears, who has a serious mental illness. They can mandate medication for the conservatee. So her father was a conservator, and basically he was the one who had to say what she can do, what she cannot do, what meds she needs to. You can also administer meds against the patient's will. Am I making sense, guys? Our camera's on. I want to check you guys out. I miss your faces. There you guys are. So excited for my class. Not all cameras are on. Maybe all of them are. One isn't. I wish we were in person. Excuse me. So that's another way, LPS. I think he's off the case though, right? The dad? You know, Amanda Bynes is also conservatorship, I think. You guys remember Amanda Bynes? How fast? It's not long. Maybe like the next day it'll be granted. The next few days. Yeah. It's fast. And then there's another type of situation where you can administer meds against the patient's will. Emergency situations. Happens all the time on the unit. Action to impose treatment despite a person's objection that is immediately necessary for the preservation of life or prevention of serious bodily harm to a patient or others, and it is impractical to first gain consent from the patient. Impractical, that means it's not necessary. So, for example, we had a patient on the unit who just started to escalate in behavior. She started to walk back and forth, started to scream for no reason. We used least restrictive methods and we're like, hey, what's going on? You can't do that, don't scream. She started punching walls. Then all of a sudden she took all her clothes off. She glued her boobs to the nurse's station wall, to the nurse's station window, and she started to scream and cuss. And she was becoming combative with the other patients. Emergency situation. I'm going to call the doctor. I'm going to get some meds and we're going to administer them. Okay, and we did. Is that only for psych patients? Like emergency situation, like all of this? Technically, yes. If you have an emergency if you have a psychiatric emergency situation outside of a psych unit, also applies. You better call the doctor and you better get a med because you want to protect yourself and you want to protect the others on the unit and you want to protect them. Does this make sense? We ended up giving this person Haldol, Seroquel, some Ativan. We're going to talk about all these meds next week, okay? But that's an emergency situation, okay? Another situation, this happened to my friend. She had a patient who was on a 5150. He was begging everyone to leave, but he's on a 50. Excuse me. He would walk in and out of his room. Hey nurse, can I please leave? My friend would say no, he would go back to his room. This would happen like for a good 20 minutes. My friend's mistake was that she was sitting in the hallway on a chair. And then after 20 minutes, he disappeared for a good 30 minutes. He comes back out in 30 minutes with a cup of his feces and throws it in her face. Are you guys not shocked at this? Am I not? Why is the chat not exploding at this? Like, this is crazy. Shock. Right? Guess what? He got a whole lot of injections. A whole lot of meds. Emergency situation. Did I give you guys a good story of emergency situation? So she sued the hospital He got. My friend told me he got what, like Haldol, Zyprexa, some meds. Yeah, and he still stayed. His hold was extended. We're gonna talk about restraint shortly. He was restrained. Yeah, all that stuff happened. She sued the hospital. She got a whole bunch of money. She was traumatized too. But here's the thing. Her mistake was she was sitting in the hallway on a chair while all the patients were walking to and about. You want to make sure you can see your exits and you can move around on a psych floor. Okay? That's so important. Body mechanics. Okay? Know your surroundings. That is so important. That was her mistake. This situation could have been prevented. Okay? But I'm on my friend's side. Yeah, that should not happen. Yeah. To escape. Yeah. I got feces thrown in my, like, on me and another nurse before. Yeah. I have so many stories I'm going to tell you guys. This is only the beginning. Okay? It's fun. Fun stuff, guys. Fun stuff. Okay? So the only time, no. You should not be. You should not be scared. It's fun. This happens one in a blue moon. Remember I said I'm a shorty, yet I walk onto the floor and I dominate. It's because of confidence. I'll trade you for my Swiffer. It's confidence. It's how you walk and how you talk to them. Okay? And you talk a lot of money. They make a lot. Okay? That's all I'm gonna tell you. No, you don't. No such thing as bad luck magnet. But you guys are gonna talk to these patients, and you're gonna think, "What the heck? That's his history." Do you get hazard pay, like safety pay? Is that what you mean? Yeah, you do. It's part of your yeah. Not every hospital does pay you for that, but yeah, you do. You get compensated well. Can you give tips for clinical? I sure can. At the end of our lecture, because we're going to end a little bit early, remind me and we'll talk about it. I sure can. Don't be afraid. It's going to be so fun. I almost wish I could do clinical again. I love clinical. I cried on the last day of clinical. They do. Mental health, you get paid a lot. A lot. A lot. You really do. Yeah. Especially when you cater to VIP clients. I worked in substance abuse, psych, substance abuse with VIP clients. I've met some incredible people. You get paid a lot. Food for thought, for the future, right? And it's fun. Yeah. Aren't you guys learning a lot today? You guys are learning about mental health and the fact that you can get paid a lot. What? What are you guys in for? How awesome is this class? And I'm coughing. Oh my god. The pay is always a good topic, right? Due process, an involuntary commitment. So your patient who's on a 5150 involuntarily held has the right to due process, has the right to go to court. Okay, they have the right for this. First one, writ of habeas corpus. Basically a written command to bring your patient to court. Okay, used to bring a prisoner or other detainee or institutionalized mental health patient, 5150, before the court to determine if the person's imprisonment or detention is lawful. So before COVID, West Coast would require you guys to do community hours for clinicals. I think you still do that now. I forgot. But with COVID, that kind of stopped. Anyway, and you guys were actually able to go to court and witness this stuff. So you would see a mental health patient who would be like, hey, judge, like, I don't want to be on a 51, like, I don't need to be on a 14-day hold on a 5250. Like, I don't belong, blah, 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 blah. And then the judge would utilize everything we've documented and be like, okay, but this happened, you wanted to harm someone on the unit, blah, 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 blah. And it's very interesting. watching the psych patient manipulate their way out of a 14-day hold, had the opportunity to come before a judge and talk about it. That's the beauty of this, okay? Now, least restrictive alternative doctrine. All this is that even though your patient is involuntarily held, they have the right to a positive milieu therapy. Remember that? Least restrictive method is basically meant, although they're on a 5150, although they're locked, please give them everything to thrive. Books, music, learning. If they want a journal, give them paper to write. If they want to draw, give them paper to draw. We utilize karaoke on the unit, movies. Everything is provided in order to give them that milieu positive therapy with minimum restrictions as much as possible, because they're already restricted and on a locked unit. Am I making sense? That's what this is. Okay, that's due process for someone who's involuntarily held. Now, we have a preliminary, it's not probably, it's probable, preliminary hearing. That's basically what a probable cause hearing is. The evidence that justifies issuing a 14-day certification basically goes hand in hand with writ of habeas corpus, okay? Mental health facility must establish specific facts that would reasonably lead someone to believe that a person is dangerous to himself or others or gravely disabled. So a probable cause is basically us, the medical team, providing all this evidence to the legal team, like, hey, like, this is why this person's on a hold, okay? Like, this is it. We're not lying. This is all documented. That's what this is, okay? Make sense? Right? No? Yes? Okay. Okay, tort laws. Willful acts that violate a patient's rights. There's a whole lot of law when it comes to psych, okay? So torts, they're intentional torts or unintentional torts, okay? Both ways. A tort is a civil wrong for which money damages may be collected by an injured party from the responsible party. So intentional tort, willful or intentional act, okay? Assault, battery, false imprisonment, invasion of privacy, defamation of character. Let's go over them, okay? Assault, threat made against a patient that makes them fearful. So a nurse can assault a patient can assault a nurse. Patients have told me 1,000 times, hey bitch, give me my Ativan, okay? Or I'm gonna hit you, assault. And I would say, oh, no problem, I can call a code gray right now. You develop your own art of nursing, right? That's not the response on your test, okay? But it's just interesting. So that's assault, the verbal threat before I physically even do anything. Or how about the nurse to the patient? Would you stop walking like that? I'm going to restrain you if you don't stop pacing back and forth. If your patient is pacing back and forth and they're not really harming anybody, that's okay. That's fine. There's no reason to restrain them. Or, you know, there's no reason to assault them. Does that make sense? The verbal threat. Okay? Battery. Touching of a patient without consent that causes harm. So when my patient threatens me that he's gonna punch me, and he actually does it, okay? He actually does it. That's the battery, the action of the assault, okay? Or when the nurse actually restrains the patient, okay? That's an intentional tort, intentionally doing something, that's battery, okay? When I go through with the battery and cause harm, I am falsely imprisoning my patient. Inappropriate confinement, the next one, okay? Restraints on the patient just to make your life easy for no reason at all, okay? Invasion of privacy, remember violating HIPAA law? That's a tort law. Some nurses who don't really pay much attention to all this kind of stuff, they get sued by these patients, especially when you're caring for a celebrity. Isn't it like, it becomes very fun when there's a celeb on the unit and all these nurses start talking, and then all these celebs find out that all their info is out, they get sued. Okay? And not just celebs, anybody can sue you. I have cared for celebs, but I'm not going to violate that HIPAA law. I'll kind of hint from time to time when I'm talking about it. Yeah, yes, they have. They have. Yeah. I'll tell you guys as we move forward who I've met and all that stuff. For learning purposes though, right? For learning purposes. But for today's reason, for today's concept, I'm not going to violate confidentiality. But always for learning purposes, yeah. Defamation of character, slander, derogatory remarks. Oh my gosh, my patient's so freaking annoying. You can't do that. That's derogatory remarks. Oh my gosh, she just constantly wants to talk to me. Or the nurse can do it to the patient. I mean, or the patient. My nurse sucks. She's horrible. Oh, she's so annoying. She's so mean. Both ways, tort law. Okay? Are we good on this? Know this like the back of your hand, like your life depends on it. Okay? And then we have unintentional tort. This is where you're so negligent and lazy that you fail to do something you're supposed to do, which leads to malpractice. Okay? This is it. Malpractice. This has a lot to do with your laziness. So your patient who's on the unit, right? He's got schizophrenia. He also has diabetes. And his blood sugar is like 200. But you're so lazy, you're so negligent that you fail to take his blood sugar and you don't give him his appropriate insulin. Or you took his blood sugar and it was 200 and you didn't give his insulin. Okay? Negligent behavior leads to malpractice. He then maybe, do you understand? I'm trying to give you this scenario. This is unintentional. You don't really intend to do it. You're maybe forgetful and you're negligent, you're lazy. This is what this is. Unintentional tort. Restraints. Even your proctor loves this. Or so a little birdie told me. Seclusion and restraints. Okay? Seclusion, involuntary confinement alone in a room. The patient is physically prevented from leaving. Okay? Restraints, device attached or adjacent to client's body, which restrains movement or normal access to one's body. We're going to talk about this right now. When the heck do I restrain my patient? When? Okay? So, there are chemical restraints, such as your meds. We utilize benzos, antipsychotics. We're going to talk about all of that next week. And we have our physical, our hand mittens, our limb restraints, our belts, and our vests. Okay? Within my 8 years, I've only used wrist restraints. I haven't used belts. I haven't used any of that stuff, which is good. That means I know what I'm doing, right? That means it's been really good quality care. But physical and chemical, those are the two types of restraints that we can utilize. Now, you use them when a patient poses an imminent danger to themselves or others. So how does this play out? Your patient is escalating in behavior. They're starting to pace, which is fine. And I'm like, hey, well, blah, blah, blah. He starts to use derogatory words, starts cussing, starts punching walls, starts, running after patients. He's a danger to others. He's a danger to self, takes off all his clothes. You try to verbally de-escalate the situation. You use de-escalation techniques first, such as therapeutic communication, and it didn't work, okay? So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go for the restraints. That's your last resort because you've used everything else. So when your patient is self-destructive behavior despite alternative interventions. I even bolded it there. Okay? That's when you use. So you used everything, you utilized least restrictive methods. It didn't work. You're gonna go for the restraint. So I'm gonna restrain my patient first to make sure that I'm safe and everyone else is safe, and then I'm gonna call the doctor to get the order. I must have my order within 15 to 30 minutes after I've restrained my patient. I have to get it. Okay? This isn't like a free pass to do whatever we want, right? But because it's an emergency situation, I don't have to call the doctor first and then restrain my patient. Restrain my patient, then place them on, then call the doctor and get the order. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, I restrained my patient, I got my order, legally I'm good. Now, I want to assess my patient. Assess the patient's circulation at least every 15 minutes while patient is in restraints. Ensure patient receives fluids and food. Take their vital signs. Range of motion. Make sure you don't cut off their circulation. And toileting while in restraints every 2 hours. Okay? Humane care does not go out the window once the patient is restrained. Every 15 minutes. Toileting every 2 hours. Now, I want to clarify something. The way this physical restraint and chemical works. Usually, on the test, it's very straightforward. It's either talking about chemical restraint or physical restraint, okay? Usually what happens is the patient becomes a danger. We've tried everything, nothing worked. We restrain the patient. We get the order within 15 to 30 minutes. When we get the order, I tell the doctor, hey doc, I tried everything. Nothing worked. I need to get an order. And I restrained him, by the way. Okay, that's fine. You have the order. Let's also give him some meds. Let's give him some Ativan. Let's give him some benzos. That's how it usually works. We restrain them. I get the restraint order from the doctor, and then he also gives us this is an emergency situation, so we can administer the chemical restraint. Am I making sense, guys? Right? Let's see. Let's read the question. For chemical restraint, would you also say yes, absolutely, always. With chemical restraints, your vital signs become priority. These meds make your vitals plummet, your respirations plummet to the floor. Okay? So you can do both at the same time? Sure, if the doctor gives you that order. If I tell the doctor, hey, I restrained him, but he seems fine, like he's okay, he might not even give you a chemical restraint. I can't give him a chemical restraint without a doctor's order, okay? If I have a standing order, absolutely, I can. It's ordered. But if I have no standing order, I'm not going to administer the medication until the doctor gives it to me, okay? Are we good? Perfect. Fun stuff. I don't know why this happens. Sometimes my slide does not go forward. Okay. Whoops. Okay. Now, I'm assessing my patient. I'm being such a great nurse, right? I want to make sure I document every 15, 30 minutes or according to facilities policy. Everything I've done better be documented. Why the heck did I even place them on the restraint in the first place? Document that. Okay? What happened? What I did? What didn't work? Why I restrained him? Okay? Time I restrained him. The order I got. Possible meds I administered. Current behavior. Did I give him food? Toileting? All of that better be documented. All of it. Okay? I can release my restraint once my patient follows my orders and is quieter and cooperative. I'm going to release it, that's fine. Okay? Now, when I release the restraints, I'm going to document when I release them. Okay? If they escalate on behavior again and there becomes a need to restrain them again, I'm gonna restrain them in the emergency situation and get another order from the doctor. This is not a PRN situation, okay? Does that make sense? There's a emergency situation, I restrain them, I call the doctor, I get the order, I assess them, I document everything, and then they're suddenly so cooperative and calm, I can, when I removed it, and then, God forbid, they escalate again and they become combative again, I can restrain them again and get another order. Always and forever. Okay? It's not a PRN situation. With all the yeses, I think that means you guys are going to ace my test next week. When you place the restraint, place it on a movable part of the bed. Remember, don't cut off that circulation. Yes? Okay. Lovely. Time frame. Know this. It'll be part of a select will that apply, like I'm even telling you guys. Okay, time frame. If you're caring for an adult, 18 years or over, it's 4 hours. Okay, 9 to 17, 2 hours. That means how long you can hold them on the restraint. And if they're 8 years old or younger, 1 hour. I do not work with kids. I love kids, and I can't work them in a psychiatric setting. Imagine restraining an 8-year-old or someone who's younger. When we talk about kids, I have some gnarly stories about kids in the psychiatric setting. But know this. Remember, you get a new order each time. It's not PRN, right? Okay. Consent. Okay, I'm not gonna go over this. Just know this, understand this, okay? So for consents to be effective legally, it must be informed. Remember, your psych patient has the right to legal informed consent. Generally, the physician or advanced practitioner, nurse practitioner, PA, they obtain the informed consent from the patient before the treatment procedure, right? Okay, so the doctor, the MD, nurse practitioner, PA, or whoever is performing the treatment, they're the ones who must be informed of the following. What problem they have, what's their condition, they have to explain the condition to them, okay? The nature of the treatment, explain the entire treatment to them, explain risks and benefits of the treatment, and whether or not there are alternative treatment options. That's their job, okay? Your job is to sign the consent form. You are the witness to your patient when they sign the consent form. You must make sure they understand the info. You must make sure they are competent to sign it voluntarily. Okay? Emancipated minor has the right to sign. Okay? It's not that they don't have the right. They're not legally competent to sign it. Okay? Now, your patient is about to sign the consent form and they say, hey nurse, I kind of don't understand this part of the treatment. Can you please explain it to me? You're going to say, okay, let me call the doctor or whoever, get the doc. Let me call the doctor so they can explain it to you. It's not your job to explain it to them, okay? Kind of makes life easy, right? That's that. Cool, huh? By the way, your patient, if they sign the consent form, they can still decide not to go with it. They have that right. They can change their mind. Okay? It's not written in stone. Yeah? Oh my gosh, chapter 8. Let's go through with it, right? So maybe we can leave a little bit early. By the way, oh, thanks. Mobile attendance question. By the way, this is the only week where we get to leave a little